Okay, so we're going to look at number 1 together on this worksheet here. So let's go through all the pieces. What does this plus 2 do to the whole thing? Or this positive 2 right here? Right, I'm going to move up 2 units once I have my basic graph graphed. What's up with this 1/2? What's that? That's the amplitude. So I'm bouncing between positive, negative 1/2. Okay? Now, we were talking about this. This is the weird stuff now. I can't have a number in front of theta. And right now, there's really a 1/4 there. So I have to force factor out a 1/4. We actually didn't practice ones like that. So do you want it with just, let's do a couple with, here's what we were doing on that other video. We were reminding ourselves, okay, if you need to factor 3x plus 6, you pull out a 3. 5x plus 15, you pull out a 5. But if you have 20x plus 10, and I'm telling you, you have to factor out a 20, you'd get x plus 1/2, right? Because you're just going to take whatever this number is and divide it into that one. And that's how you get this number here. So same, sorry. Same thing here. If I'm telling you you have to factor out an 8, you would get 8 plus 1/4. And you can always check yourself by multiplying it back in. So then we threw a pi on it. Okay, well, pi, it doesn't really change anything. You just still have a pi there. So if I have to force factor out a 9, you're just going to do 3 pi divided by 9 to get that number right there. So same idea. Now let's try one where the first number is a fraction. So let's say I had a 1/2 x plus 3. Yeah, Rosa, here's the worksheet that we are kind of about to, we're kind of doing some algebra first real quick to make sure that we're all set. So if I force factor out a 1/2, I'd have x, and then what? It'd be what? Plus 6, right? Because 3 divided by a 1/2 is really 3 times 2, right? And if you just quickly factor it back in, if you distribute the 1/2 back in, don't you get right back here? So let's try another one with a fraction. Say you had 1/4 x plus 1/5. And I asked you to force factor out a 1/4. X plus 4/5, you say?
That's what I said.
Well, I can very quickly check them by just distributing it back in. Does it work out? Yeah. So again, you're just taking this number and you're dividing it by 1/4. But dividing by 1/4 is the same thing as multiplying by 4. Okay, one more and then we'll go back to the, say you had, oh, I don't know, 2/9 x plus pi over 7. I don't know. I'm making it as ugly as it could be. What's that going to turn into? You pull out a 2/9 and you're left with x plus 9 pi over 14. That's right. Because you're dividing by a fraction. So when you divide by a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal. Yep. Okay. Don't forget, if you're a little shaky on it, distribute it back in and make sure that your math checks out. So if I distribute that back in, yes, the 2 and the 14 would cancel. I get a 7, the 9s are gone. I would get right back here. Oh, hi. We were just talking about some algebra real quick to factor out fractions, but hopefully this video will take. So let's try it here. So we said that the 2 is going to move it up to. 1/2 is my amplitude, and now I have to force factor out a 1/2. So I'm looking at this. 2 plus a 1/2 cosine, I mean a 1/4, sorry. Force factor out a 1/4, and what's left? Theta minus pi. Correct. So now, guys, I have all the pieces that I need. I know I'm eventually going to go up to, and I'm going to shift it to the, which way? to the right pi units, but right now I'm just going to graph really kind of this part of it. So I do need to figure out the period. How do I even do that? How do you find the period? 2 pi over b. And what's b? It's 1/4, right? So 2 pi over 1/4. That's how I'm getting 1 period is 8 pi. So, luckily, oh look, they have 8 pi. I have all my quarter points. I'm good to go. Remember, I'm only going between positive and negative 1/2, so this will be a pretty tiny graph. And it's cosine, so I'm going to start positive 1/2. Hit 0, negative 1/2, 0, positive 1/2, and then just keep your pattern going. Negative 1/2. All right, there is my original graph. And now I'm going to do those shifts. So we already said it's going to be up to, and it's going to be to the right pi units. How many boxes is pi in this on the scale? 1. So I want to go up 2 whole units, and each box is 1, so it really is just 2 boxes. So I'll take each point. I will move it up 2, and I will move it to the right 1. Does that make sense to everybody? So that first point just went up 2 whole boxes. So now I'm at 2.5 and over 1 box. And then I do the same with all the other points. Up 2 over 1. Up 2 over 1. And there is my new graph. Yes.
May I please go to the bathroom?
You may.
Because she knows I'm gonna go play.